Welcome to the Announcers Booth podcast presented by Rapid Graphics, a brand new podcast focused on local dirt track racing in the Midwest tri-state area. Today on the show, we have 360 Sprint Car driver and the man behind the Sodak iRacing series, Troy Schures, to talk about how he got started in racing and where the Sodak iRacing series is today. Also on the show, we have one of the voices of the Sodak iRacing series, Shawn Neistadt, how he got his start in announcing to what it's like announcing at the legendary Houston Speedway. All this and more coming up next on the Announcers Booth podcast presented by Rapid Graphics. Good morning, race fans, and thank you for tuning in and spending part of your Wednesday morning with us here on the Announcers Booth podcast presented by Rapid Graphics. My name is Scotty DeYoung, but my friends and family call me Scotty Too Hotty, and I will be your host here this morning for this show and every show of the Announcers Booth podcast, and I cannot thank you enough for tuning in. This is going to be a new podcast starting today, actually, episode number 1, and we're going to be focusing on local dirt track racing within the tri-state area of Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, and a little bit of Minnesota as well. And this is just, like we said, something we are trying here is brand new. Most of you may remember me from hosting the Advantage Racing podcast with Advantage Racing TV's Ryan Dugan. And with how busy Advantage Racing TV has gotten over this past year, Ryan just did not have the time to fit the podcast into his schedule. So he said, Scotty, the fans loved it. Why don't you keep it going? So we made a name change and basically rebranded everything. And he showed me the ropes of how to do everything here. So we are proud to present to you the Announcers Booth podcast presented by Rapid Graphics. Rapid Graphics, one of the advertising partners on board here, the Announcers Booth, as well as a few others with Four Orange Salvage, the Sodak iRacing series, and of course Advantage Racing TV. And we will hear more from them later on. So, like I said, this podcast focused on local racing here in the tri-state area, and man, what a 2020 season we had. Starting off earlier this year when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, none of us thought we were going to be able to go racing at all, and that there was rules, regulations, mandates, and man, are we ever going to get to go racing? And finally, the day came where we could go racing. Sadly, no fans were allowed in the stands at all, but that's where the pay-per-view there on the World Wide Web came in and said, you know what, we're going to bring the races to you right there in your own living rooms and make sure that it feels like you're at the races there yourself. And then finally, fans started being able to come in. Hey, this is great. We can watch racing again, and then full capacity. And man, what a wild season that 2020 was. Um, if you were tuned into Advantage Racing TV, you saw some tracks that you probably hadn't seen before weekly broadcasted on there. Of course, Rock Rapids and the Rapid Speedway broadcasted every Friday night, as well as the Denison, Iowa track, the Crawford County Speedway down there on Saturdays. You saw the Off-Road Speedway in Norfolk, Nebraska, bringing you some IMCA action, as well as Harlan, Iowa for the Shelby County Speedway. And then on Sundays, the new Raceway Park in Jefferson, South Dakota, the tiny bull ring there right alongside the interstate, bringing you great racing action each and every Sunday night. And then Wednesdays over in Alta, over at the Beaver, the Buena Vista County Raceway, and some great racing through all those tracks. Thank you to the fans, that tuned into Advantage Racing TV. You guys are, why those guys do what they do, and they couldn't be happier bringing you the racing action to your homes. So a little bit of recap on 2020 there, and what we can look forward to in 2021. I think all of us are ready for this COVID-19 pandemic to be over. I mean, near the end of the season, it seemed that, at least in this area, that tracks could be at full capacity with cars, drivers, crews, and fans. I know some tracks were not able to in more populated areas. I know with Knoxville closing down and not being able to finish the rest of their season, as well as the Jackson Motorplex in Jackson, Minnesota, not being able to do that as well. But I think the main story in our area, and you're going to hear more about this from one of our guests later on, the legendary Huset's Speedway finally being bought and running a few races to close out the 2020 season. A lot of the drivers in our area were excited that the track reopened, and some drivers being able to get back on track to the track they call home and do some great racing there. And we will hear more about that from our two guests today. We have Troy Schures, a 360 sprint car driver, and the man behind the Sodak iRacing series presented by Asphalt Pros is on the show today. To talk about how he grew up in racing and where he is at in the racing today. Also with the Sodak iRacing series, how that got started, and just the level of competition that they bring to the table each and every week, as well as I'm one of the voices of the Sodak iRacing series, and I've got to tell you, these guys, they don't mess around. I mean, they are here to put on a good show. I mean, Troy does an amazing job promoting this, getting sponsors and everything, racing for a huge purse for a championship at the end of this season. And the guys that put on these races each and every week does not disappoint. We had 7 different winners in the first 7 races, and just the first repeat winner last week in Tyler Johnson, the driver of the number 5 car, the first repeat winner, and he's actually your points leader as well. So we'll have Troy on later to talk about that. Also on the show today, Shawn Neistadt, the voice of the legendary Huset Speedway as well as the I-90 Speedway in Hartford, South Dakota, and he has been the voice of so many tracks here in this area, as well as the voice of the Property Solutions of America Midwest Sprint Touring Series, and he has also made the call for some of the action for the RepairableVehicle.com Tri-State late models as well. And I mean, Shawn just has an amazing story of what it was like growing up at the track, and everything leading up to where he is today with announcing, and you are not going to want to miss out on that at all. So great interviews coming up later on in the show. For those of you that are wondering what I do, I am actually the voice of the Off-Road Speedway in Norfolk, Nebraska, and I just want to say a big thank you to Jerry Pospischel and Brian Signor for giving me the opportunity to be the voice of your track this past summer, and definitely looking forward to 2021. Also, I am one of the voices of the new Raceway Park in Jefferson, South Dakota, home of what they call Sunday Church in the Dirt, South Dakota style. Myself and PJ Pedersen being the voices there, and always fun working with PJ on Sunday nights. And I got to tell you what, though, the new Raceway Park and Steve Corrali came on board in 2019 when the track was going to sit dormant, and he said, you know what, we have to keep racing here alive here in the Sioux City area, and redid some renovations, to the concession stand area and other places, in the pits and to the track and whatnot, and said, you know what, we're going to open up and, we're going to have some races, and a great, great, great 2019 season it was, and as well as the 2020 season where the Raceway Park was actually only the only sporting event going on in the world at the time when the pandemic hit, and Advantage Racing TV caught all of the action, and we had some big name drivers come down just for that Sunday night race. We had Kenny Wallace was here, Kenny Schrader was here, both former NASCAR drivers. Other big names you might recognize like Ricky Thornton Jr. was here, and we also had Jonathan Logue from the Boone Speedway or in and around there come down. Even some drivers up in Minnesota, like Dan McIntyre driving the 92 car, came down, and just drivers all over coming down and racing with us at the new Raceway Park, and was definitely a fun way to kick off the 2020 season. And man, I just hope we are done with the whole mask thing by 2021, and we can get back to the regular world and back to some good old dirt track racing. So we looked at the 2021 rules for the IMCA and the USRA sanctions. Those two sanctions mainly found in our area. Didn't really see a change going on much between both sanctions. A little bit of changes here and there for both sanctions, but nothing really new. I know some drivers weren't happy about some of the changes. Other drivers, okay, that doesn't bother us. As a former driver racing hobby stocks, honestly, I would have looked at the rules and been like, okay, I really don't see anything I have to change. We usually did everything by the book. So, yeah, I hope the 2021 season is definitely going to be better. And a safe, more safe rule package as well. I mean, because we all care about safety, and that's the one thing I have to preach, ladies and gentlemen. As a guy who's been involved in two really nasty wrecks, you can't put a price on safety. Yes, that full containment seat or that full containment neck restraint might cost a little bit more, but you know what? In the end, it will save your life. And yeah, cannot put a price on safety. Please, please, please use the proper safety equipment, and it will definitely treat you well. We are going to take a quick break here, and we are going to hear from 4 Orange Salvage, one of our advertising partners. And when we come back, we are going to have a 4 Orange Salvage question of the day. That is going to be something we're going to be doing on every episode. So we'll be right back after this break from 4 Orange Salvage.
Evicted tenants leave a mess behind? Have an old appliance that you're tired of staring at? Yard waste, branches, carpet, old furniture, other discarded items you just want gone? Well, 4 Orange Salvage can take it all away. Call Jamie at 605-376-8532 for a quote today, or you can find him on Facebook by searching 4 Orange Salvage Junk Haulers. Contractless payment through Venmo or PayPal is also available. Quick, easy, and affordable junk hauling. 4 Orange Salvage. We pick things up and we take them away. Serving Sioux Falls, South Dakota and surrounding areas.
Welcome back to the Announcers Booth podcast. A big thank you to 4 Orange Salvage coming on as one of our advertising partners here today. And that is going to bring us to the 4 Orange Salvage question of the day. For those of you that were on Facebook, saw the video I put out asking the 4 Orange Salvage question of the day. And the question was, what is the craziest thing you've ever had to fix using some redneck ingenuity? And I got to tell you, the answers that you guys gave me, some of them are just, wow, I could never imagine. And others, yep, been there, done that. So let's go right into this fan interaction that we are going to have on each and every show. It's the 4 Orange Salvage question of the day. What is the craziest thing you've ever had to fix using redneck ingenuity? Our first one from Nick McVeigh, and sadly, I have to agree with him. He said, your first race car. What he's talking about is 2017, my rookie year of Circle Track Racing. Nick was my crew chief and my pit guy. Nick did a lot, and I couldn't thank him enough for that, but all the things that we had to either fix or replace or everything was almost just about, jerry-rigged on that car for what we would call redneck ingenuity. And some days it got pretty bad. So, yes, my first car from Nick McVeigh. Caden Brassel here. I had to hotwire my cooling fan in the summertime on my daily driver before I finally decided to put a switch in it. Didn't feel like replacing all the wires. Instead, I would pop the hood, hook up my fan to my battery when I needed to go somewhere. Wow, that is dedication, especially during the summer. I mean, kudos to you, man. Webb Dillard. Oh, no. This one includes a sailboat. I'm almost too scared to read this. Bought a sailboat in Fort Lauderdale back in 2016. Found this problem the day we were shoving off of the Florida Keys. The nav light was out and was an old-style bulb, and the boat was a 1968 model. So since the nav light had a magnifying glass housing, duct tape is what he used, as well as a flashlight, the redneck ingenuity to fix the glass bulb housing. And he says clicked it on and it worked. You find that a lot at the racetrack, redneck ingenuity using duct tape, zip ties. Hey, it works, right? See here, Dustin Jackson ran compact, snapped a shearing shaft off about a foot, and found a collar and bolted it. Seemed fine, but as the feature went on, steering got looser and looser. It was basically like tilt steering wheel without a lock. Definitely a handful in the corners. Man, I believe it. Tim Pritchett Jr., zip ties, pop rivets, and duct tape. Racer's best friend. Amen there, Tim. Dylan Langell, let me see. 98 Honda Civic got smashed into by a drunk driver in 2014. Axle and tire were all good, so I used black Gorilla duct tape and wood to shape the left side as best as I could. Used truck tape over the light to make it red. Lasted until I got my new ride. Dylan, yes, that is what redneck ingenuity is all about. Leon Mulder had the wood grain steering wheel stolen out of his work car and drove 45 miles home with a vice grip. I too know what that's like. I actually had a steering wheel break on me and thankfully had a vice grip around and drove it to the shop, except it was only 3 miles, not 45. So, wow. Kudos to you, Leon, for driving the 45 miles home with a vice grip. Jordan Hendricks had to pull the driver's side panel up from off the tire due to my mom backing into it with their truck in 2013. Learned from watching enough NASCAR. Still has the dent in it to this day. Hey, man, yeah, NASCAR, they use redneck ingenuity all the time to get stuff ready as well. A couple answers here. A couple semis had to have been redneck ingenuity. One that was not commented on here, but I think I have to share with you guys. Tracy Haluska, driver of the 86 Hobby Stock over at Rapid Speedway and I-90 Speedway. I interviewed him last year on the Advantage Racing podcast, and I asked him this question. He's like, boy, that's really hard to think about. Oh, no, I think I know what it is. I don't necessarily would call this fixed, but he said the tranny mount for the transmission broke, and I was like, please tell me you didn't use zip ties to hold the transmission up. He's like, well, actually, we took a ratchet strap, and I remember Ryan sitting on the other side of Tracy just burst out laughing and goes, oh, man, that's better. And he's like, yeah, we just took the ratchet strap and, wrapped it around a couple times and connected here, connected there, and hey, it worked. I was like, did it pass tech? And did Darlo Mulder know? He's like, actually, I don't know if he knew or not. And I was like, man, that's a crazy way to end a night there with racing. He's like, oh yeah, we used it like 6 weeks after too. We didn't put a train mount back in. We used the ratchet strap for like 6 more weeks. I was like, oh my goodness. If that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, then I don't know what is. So that is this week's question for the Fort Orange Salvage question of the day. Excuse me, I cannot talk today. We're going to have next week's question here right now. So if you're listening into the podcast here, next week's Fort Orange Salvage question of the day is, what was your favorite memory in the 2020 racing season? I'll say that one more time. What was your favorite memory of the 2020 racing season? That's going to be next week's Fort Orange Salvage question of the day. You can find me on Facebook and tell me what your favorite memory was. You go to facebook.com/S2H VoiceWorks. That will bring you to my announcer page on Facebook there, and then you can answer that question. Send me a message. I'll be putting a post out on Facebook later today as well. But what was your favorite memory from the 2020 racing season? That's going to be the Fort Orange Salvage question of the day for episode number 2 coming up next week. We are going to take another quick break here and hear from our title advertiser in Rapid Graphics. And when we come back, we will be interviewing the one and only Troy Schures, 360 sprint car driver with the Midwest Sprint Touring Series, as well as the guy in charge of the Sodak iRacing Series. So you are going to want to stick around for that. But first, a word from our title advertising partner, Rapid Graphics.
Rapid Graphics, located in Rock Rapids, Iowa, on the corner of Highway 9 and 75, specialize in graphics and signage of all types. They specialize in indoor and outdoor signage, banners, commercial vehicles, custom logos, race car graphics, and much, much more. Rapid Graphics have the tools to get your job done, and you can find them easily on Facebook at Rapid Graphics 12 for more information. Contact Rapid Graphics for all of your custom graphic and signage needs today.
We are back now with our first ever guest on the Announcers Booth podcast presented by Rapid Graphics. And Troy Schures is our first guest here on the show today. And Troy talks about how he got his start in racing from go-karts up to 360 sprint cars and racing with the Midwest Sprint Touring Series, as well as how the Sodak iRacing Series came about and to what they are doing today as well. If you want to learn more about the Sodak iRacing Series, you can look them up on Facebook. Search Sodak iRacing Series to find out more information, as we're going to go right into the Sodak iRacing Series phone lines in our interview with Troy Schures. So coming inside the announce booth now is would be 360 sprint car driver with the MSTS Midwest Sprint Touring Series, I should say, and the man behind the Sodak iRacing Series, Troy Schures. And Troy, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So you are a busy guy on and off the track, and during the season and during the off season. We don't know how you've managed to conjumble everything together, but what we want to know is how did your racing career start, and who was the biggest influence on you for this sport?
My career started back in the late 90s racing go-karts is where I initially started. Did that for a few years. Just gradually kept moving into different stuff and, went to four-wheel drives after that. And then I went into non-wing sprint car and then the sprint car. And the biggest influence then, my family, my mom and dad and my twin brother have been great. It's our family activity we've always done since we got into it in the 90s, and that's why we still do it. It's our time we get to spend together still.
Now, your brother Travis, does he race along with you as well, or?
Yep. We've raced pretty much the exact same time frame since we started. We've always raced alongside each other, and well, not literally. He runs the hobby stock and then the street stock, and then I ran some sprint car stuff. But we've up until last year when he retired, we've pretty much been racing every year since then.
And now just the sprint car racing for you. I know during the season you're busy with not only the iRacing series, but then just the regular racing with the sprint car as well. I know the news with Huset's coming back earlier this year and having a few races. What was that feeling like of finally being back at your home track?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, that was it. It went about as perfectly as it could go. Just the overall experience. The 2-day show that we had there was fantastic, with camping right there at the racetrack. Myself and Jody Rosenboom and our crews were all camped right next to each other. So it was just the experience, you leave the car at the track and, everything's right there. And it was awesome. It felt really, really, really good to be back.
And with that legendary track, coming back as well, I mean, I'm sure there's been a few highlights in your racing career, just maybe not just racing at Huset's, but everywhere else you've raced at. What would you say would be like the top highlight of your racing career so far?
I would say I had a lot of good nights. I mean, the highlight most people probably remember is the Rock Rapids show where I got passed in the last lap. I mean, that was other than that one lap, that was one of my better nights with, good competition. I had some nights at Hartford that I came from the back and, quite a ways back and won, which is pretty cool. But I've never really won any, major or big shows or anything like that. We've been close, but those couple of things really stick out.
And then there was, as well as the iRacing series. How did you get into iRacing, and what is it like racing on, they call the simulator, to the real world?
Well, I originally got into it when they started coming out with the dirt package. It was originally asphalt and, oval track, road course, things like that. And then a friend of mine had it, and he's like, "Oh, they're coming out with dirt. You should try this, see what it's like, and let me know how it is." And I went to his house and tried it when it came out, and it was really realistic, and back then, even compared to what it is now, it's nothing even close to what it is now. It's so much better now, just with how it evolves. And so he wanted me to come try it. So I came and tried it, and I was like, well, this is pretty cool. I got to get this. So it is very comparable. I mean, it's not exactly the same as the real world, obviously, but it's nice to keep you fresh, especially now with the way the track changes and things like that. It keeps your mind, still constantly looking for what's happening next, or how to stay on your toes during the course of a race. Even though it is a simulator or a video game or whatever, it still keeps your brain working the way it does in a real car.
So during the off season, then with staying consistent with iRacing, does that bring like a better perspective and not so much as to knock off the rust they say like the first night out in the real racing world?
Yeah, it definitely does make a difference. It makes that learning curve a little less right out of the gate, because you've been a little more fresh with it. You're not quite so green when you get to the racetrack. You've done some stuff to keep your mind on it. So it definitely makes a difference when it comes to that.
So then not only has the racing world been a big part of your life, but now the virtual racing world and now the Sodak iRacing series that you also run. How did you get involved then with creating the Sodak iRacing series, and how would you compare it like with the other drivers that are in there that you also race with on a regular basis?
It originally started, it was just a local group of us. I figured out there's some local guys on it, from this area, and we just basically just needed a reason to get on and drink beer on a Wednesday night, have a reason to actually go on and hang out with each other virtually, and then then when the COVID stuff hit, it kind of got to the point where it's like, well, I think we need to maybe have something that we could benefit from here or whatever. And Ryan from Advantage contacted me, and he's like, I think we can, bring this to people, and I think it might take off. And like, sure. So we put a 10-week schedule together and did a practice race, and the practice race was a hit. And got a couple sponsors on board to get the drivers to race for some money, and it's really just snowballed from there.
So then with the start then, like you mentioned with COVID-19, the pandemic hit, and when we really couldn't go racing at all, Stodak was there, and then now currently in the second season, as a matter of fact, tonight, we're supposed to have the night off, but I believe a big enduro race entertainment for the fans tonight. Since the series started to where it is now, how has it grown and adapted since its start with the amount of drivers that you have coming in?
Yeah, it's grown substantially. I mean, just even we have so many great sponsors that want to be a part of it, and I think it helps us that we're, our core group of people that we're bringing this to is our local race fans, and that's where we're different from a lot of iRacing or esports leagues. Is they do stuff nationally, globally, or whatever. That's the people they're targeting. We're targeting our local race fans, giving them something to watch, giving their local people something they can watch, giving them local sponsors their broadcast time to local people, and we're just kind of targeting it and running it like the MSTS or like the Tri-State Late Models or like a racetrack or something like that. That's how we're kind of trying to run it, and I think that's what makes it more beneficial. And having guys like you and Shawn and Jay Van, and that really validate it as not just a bunch of guys playing a video game. They treat it like it's the real thing, and we try to bring the real product as best we can. I think that's what makes people really take it seriously, that it's not just a video game that we're bringing to them.
And the fan response, I mean, it has to be, like you mentioned, staying local. The fan response, I'm sure, is just like blown out of the water and blown away with how good this series has been, and just what has been the fans' like reaction? I know with season 2 here, it's been really, really wild. What has the fan reaction been then from season 1 now to season 2?
It's been great. I mean, I haven't had hardly any complaints or anything. I mean, everybody loves it. I think the racing's been awesome. They like seeing all these guys are following it like they are a local racetrack. They got their favorites, and they got their, they like to watch the different cars and different tracks and different things we do, and it's pretty crazy just to see, because I mean, a lot of the people that are watching this aren't people that have ever watched, iRacing or esports or anything like that. It's all new to them, so it's cool to see the people who aren't in that world, to see what their reaction is to it and see such a positive reaction.
And you've mentioned, a couple times already, treating it like an actual racetrack, out in the real world. Sponsors help majorly, with sponsoring, real racetracks and races. How has the sponsor reaction been from season 1 to season 2, and who are a few of the sponsors that help make this happen?
Yeah, the reaction from season 1 to season 2 has been crazy because everybody, I mean, they saw and a lot of that is, credit to you and Shawn, is just how well you guys treat our sponsors that we have and how make sure we're giving them, what they paid for. The publicity they're getting out of it. This year Asphalt Pros came on as a primary sponsor for this season, and that was a huge. I mean, that made my life so much easier to get everything where I wanted it to be. As far as a purse for the drivers and like Busby Gone and Caleb Johnson Racing and Volts Concrete, Jack's Custom Rods, the Cabaret in Carthage. They have it on their TVs every night up there, so it's a hit up there at the Cabaret. And Broken Arrow Whitetails. Just all the fun little challenges we do too. Like the back row challenge that Broken Arrow Whitetails does, and the trifecta from Volts Concrete, where if you quick time and get the heat win in the feature, and it's just a lot of fun stuff to follow along with. As the night goes on, and that's our sponsors, and basically the only way I could do that.
You mentioned, like a purse out in the, for a real race at, one of your local tracks. You guys actually have a purse and a championship that guys are running for points for, and there's going to be a champion at the end of this 10-week series. How did that come about? Just planning for, hey, we actually want to pay these guys. These guys are giving real entertainment. Let's make this more exciting and, throw a little something in at the end. How did that come about for coming up with a purse for this series?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was giving the drivers something to race for so they take it seriously too, not just jumping on and racing around and nothing really matters. It makes them think about decisions they're making when, hey, I could get $50 if I win tonight, or if if I'm running fourth and I want to get third, that's another $20 I could make if I get past this guy, or being, the way our point structure works, and to have the what our point system pays out, it's just for the championship alone is over $2,000 in point money, from the top 10. So it makes the guys really think about what they're doing and treat it like something real and not just like a video game. I think that's what makes the racing so much better.
And you guys practice constantly during the week, having test races, testing different tracks, different classes, and then have a full-blown dress rehearsal, I guess, as we would put it, the night before. And how is the level of talent with these drivers? Season 1, we saw a few repeat winners, and I know Tanner Koster taking home the championship at the end of the year. This year, I know you've had 7 different winners in the first 7 weeks, and now just this past week, your first repeat winner. How has the level of competition been here in season number 2?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I can't believe. I mean, if you would have told me we'd had 7 races and 7 different winners, I never would have believed you. We have so much talent, and there's a lot of them rise to the top, and we have so many different, cars and track combinations. I like to mix it up to give some people an advantage. There's some people who will go in a sprint car and they're, it's hard to make the A feature. Then we'll go to a body car after that, and they're top 2, top 3. It's cool to see who is fast some weeks and who just really rises to the occasion when you go to something new and something different. And the competition we have is it's insane. I mean, and watching how good people are getting as the year goes on, I watch a lot of that each week too. Like our driver Kevin Roast, he's gotten great from the first week to now. It's fun to see how guys progress as it goes on. And then even going in like other races on iRacing, when we'll go in and just do some fun races with other guys, we're usually pretty close to the top guys every week. So even not just in our league, the guys are good. It's when we go race other stuff, they're still top drivers.
And you explain, having different classes and different track combinations. You guys have had, sprint cars, street stocks, stock cars. Well, I guess that would be street stocks, late models, and I believe modifieds too. There's just a little bit of everything for everyone to enjoy. We know you have a couple races coming up to end the season, which ends on December 30th, actually. Can you give us a little insight of what we can expect in the next 2 weeks?
Yep, yeah, that's what I like to mix it up and have everybody do, race different cars, because some people are better at some and some people are worse at some. And if they want to win the championship, they got to be good at all of them or learn how to, get through all of them. So, Yeah, we go to this week. We got just a bonus race because we were originally supposed to have it off for dirt in December. So we got a trophy trucks at a road course. It's something a little different and put everybody on the same playing field. Something we never do. So it should be a fun week. And then we go to we have like a UMP modified race coming up, and a non-wing sprint car race, which will be interesting because we don't usually ever run those. So that should be a real game changer to see how that works for everybody. So yeah, everybody's in practice then to get these last couple weeks dialed in to see how they can end up.
And definitely great entertainment for not only the fans, but for I know the guys that are working the cameras on Advantage Racing TV and the production, as well as the announcers as well. You mentioned Shawn Neistadt and Jerry Van Sickle and myself, of course, being on part of the announce team. It's just been a great season to watch, and actually throughout the year. Do we expect a season 3 possibly after the new year, or what is going to be happening with Sodak from here on out?
Yeah, that's definitely up in the air. I mean, I'm whatever the fans want, we can bring them. You know, I've definitely thought about doing maybe a condensed one. You know, because we're getting ready for real car stuff. You know, late in the winter. You know, February, March. So I don't know if I'll probably go quite that long just in my own schedule, but it's definitely I'm open to anything. You know, if we can get some sponsors on board for another season or whatever we can do, and if fans want it, you know, I'll bring it to them.
So Wednesday nights is the night to check out the Sodak iRacing Series presented by Asphalt Pros, like you mentioned earlier. Where can the fans find these races and find out more information about the Sodak Series?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook at Sodak iRacing Series. You know, like the page on Facebook, we share all the races at Advantage broadcast. You can find the races on their Facebook page, Advantage Racing TV, at 8:00 on Wednesdays, and that's where you'll get all of your information for everything that's happening.
And is definitely something you are not going to want to miss. Like you mentioned, tonight is going to be trophy trucks at a Wild Horse road course, I believe is what you had mentioned, enduro style. So you are not going to miss that out tonight, 8 p.m. Central Time for the Sodak iRacing Series. And Troy, it's just amazing what you've done with the series, not only with that, but also with the racing out in the real world that you've done as well, and managed to combine both of them together. And I just want to say thank you for being on the show, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Once again, that was Troy Schures, the man behind the Sodak iRacing Series presented by Asphalt Pros, also 360 sprint car driver as well, and man, he does it all. We are going to go into a break. Speaking of the Sodak iRacing Series, we're going to hear from them. And just on the other side of the break, the one and only Shawn Neistadt, voice of the legendary Houston Speedway. And we will hear from him right after this.
The Sodak iRacing League is the premier iRacing league for drivers, crew members, fans, and sponsors in the tri-state area around South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. From street stocks to super late models, modifieds to sprint cars, the Sodak iRacing League does them all. You can follow all of their seasons live and free on Advantage Racing TV. For more information, look for Sodak iRacing on Facebook or join the league by searching for Sodak under the Leagues tab on your iRacing account.
And welcome back to the Announcers Booth podcast. We have guest number 2 about to come on to the Sodak iRacing Series phone lines. And this guy has... He's done it all, in my opinion. He is the voice of so many things. He is the voice of the I-90 Speedway in Hartford, South Dakota, as well as one of the voices of the Sodak iRacing Series. He's been to multiple tracks, as well as voices the Midwest Sprint Touring Series. He's also done stuff for the Tri-State Late Models, but most importantly, he is the voice of the legendary Houston Speedway in Brandon, South Dakota. Here is the interview with Shawn Neistadt. Now coming inside the announce booth is he's not a stranger to announce booths. Let's just get that out of the way first and foremost. This guy is the voice of legendary Houston Speedway, I-90 Speedway. He's voiced many races in our region. Shawn Neistadt joins us on the show. Shawn, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, Scotty, good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And like I said, the voice of the legendary Houston Speedway on Sunday nights, and as well as the Property Solutions of America Midwest Sprint Touring Series. Where did it all begin just in the announcer stage, growing up at the racetrack? Did you always know that you wanted to be a track announcer?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I think the story for me begins a lot like a lot of race fans and announcers out there, playing with my Matchbox cars in my bedroom as a little kid. Um, you make the noise of the cars, and sometimes you start to announce a little bit. And I suppose I noticed when I was pretty little, I did a lot of that. For me, going to the races started when I was teeny tiny little, going to Houston Speedway. For me, that was family tradition. My grandparents lived in Brandon. So my mom and my aunts and my uncle, they all grew up in Brandon. And so Sunday night, the vast majority of that family would get together and go down to Houston Speedway. And uh, I was fortunate as a little kid that I was part of that tradition. I remember the Sunday afternoons gathering at my grandparents' house, or my grandma had made a big thing of barbecues, and everyone would gather there and eat and then head off to the racetrack. And really, really fortunate that that was really kind of part of my DNA with family. So that's really where it all started for me. My grandpa drove a few times. My uncle Bruce Nitro was a racer. Of course, now his son Jared Nitro continues to race, and so for me, it's family, and it's kind of always been part of who I am.
And then as opposed with like all racing families who basically like grew up at the track, like you mentioned, part of your DNA just growing up around that environment. Was it always Houston Speedway that you would go to on Sunday nights, or were there different tracks that you would also visit as well as a kid?
Houston Speedway was our Sunday night go-to. That was a guaranteed in the summer that we were going to Houston Speedway. Um, I grew up in Hartford, so there were a lot of trips out to Red Devil Speedway at the time, was the name. Never got out there during the half mile days when I was a wee little tyke. I don't ever remember seeing the half mile Hartford Speedway, but we would go to Red Devil. We'd go up to Madison to Lake County Speedway. Friday nights, I remember a lot of Friday nights going with my grandpa. Um, Down to Rock Rapids, to Rapid Speedway. A lot of nights there, my grandpa, Jared Nitro, who's my cousin, and myself sitting there, kind of right next to the announce booth where it is today. And those seats now, or those seats then, are the seats that I sit in now when I'm sitting there in Rock Rapids watching a show, or if an MSTS race is there and I'm just off to the side. That's exactly where I sat 20 some 30 some years ago. Oh, that's yeah, sitting there watching races with my family. I remember trips to other racetracks as well. I remember going to Watertown as a kid. I remember going down to Eagle with my mom and my grandpa. We went down to Eagle and watched the World of Outlaws. We made it a priority every year when the Duel in the Dakotas was a big deal with the World of Outlaws. We'd go up to Fargo. And I think one of the coolest racing trips I've ever been on, yeah, I don't remember how old I was. I was pretty young, not even a teenager yet, maybe 13-ish, 14 maybe. We went up to Fargo and watched the 3 days of racing there. And then the Outlaws, I think we're going from there to Grand Forks. And my grandma, who rarely went to races, was along on that trip. And we said, you know what, the heck with it. Let's take another day. And we went to the races in Grand Forks, and unbelievable good times. Traveling kind of all over the upper Midwest going to races. Remember a trip, I was a little kid. I'd never seen late models. We went to Park Jefferson. There was one of their big late model shows back in the late 80s, early 90s. So Houston's was a weekly deal, but if we could get to a race somewhere else, we sure did it. I was a blessed kid. We grew up dirt poor in Hartford, but I was a blessed kid. We got to go to a lot of races.
And with traveling to all those racetracks and just watching all these amazing races, when did it click that say, I want to be a track announcer. I mean, this is like really cool what they're doing, bringing not only the racing action, to the fans in the stands, but just the excitement of it as well. So, when was it that it clicked when you said, "Hey, I want to be a track announcer"?
I don't know. I don't know if there's an exact moment that I was like, "Hey, yeah," but the opportunity for me came. So as a high school student, I wrote for our high school newspaper, which was pretty natural. I've always been interested in journalism, and ended up doing that, for a decade, as a professional. So as a high school kid, I wrote for our high school newspaper, and that led to me writing for what was called the Wheel to Wheel, which was basically the program at Huset's Speedway. But instead of it being one print all year, you buy that same program with a new point sheet in it. At this time, it was pretty much a weekly newspaper, and it served for the program for Rapid Speedway, Lake County Speedway, and Huset Speedway. And so I got an opportunity to start writing for that. And so that led to me going weekly to the races at those three tracks. So really, I was fortunate to get to do that. Big blessing to me from the Rubin family to allow this high school kid to take a pretty, what I considered a big part in what they did. Looking back at it, wasn't that huge of a deal, but for me, it was huge at the time. And that gave me an opportunity to actually start going into the pits after the races and interviewing these drivers, which starts to change your perspective when you're at the racetrack, right? You're not a fan anymore. You're trying to be neutral, and you're talking with these drivers. And then the opportunity came. We had the race at Huset's called the Gold Cup, which was always the Saturday night, 1 week after the Knoxville Nationals was done. And so they would have 410 sprint cars at Huset's, and Lake County would run its typical show minus the 360 sprint. So it was an all stock car show at Lake County Speedway. And so Mark Tassler was the announcer of both tracks at the time. Well, now you've got a problem. You've got two races, one announcer. What do you do? And so in 2001, at 18 years old, they said, "Hey, give it a shot. Why don't you fill in on this night as the announcer?" And at that point, I had an interest in it, and I won't say I was good, but I must not have been the worst ever. And so the next year, that became a full-time deal for me.
Yeah, was that over at Lake County, or was that at Huset's?
Yep. That was at Lake County. Yep, I did the stock car show at Lake County. Mark did that night at Huset's, and then the following year I started full-time at Lake County.
So Lake County, then your first announcing job you've ever had, and since then, how has your life changed since that first show to where it is today, announcing over at Huset's?
I thought I sucked when I first started. It's tough because as an announcer, when you first start, you have to find who you are, and you have to find the ways to be who you are and get comfortable with what you're working with. And back then, I mean, it's, to me, announcing has gotten easier with time, as it should with experience. But now, 9 times out of 10, you've got live timing and scoring in front of you. If you don't have live timing and scoring, you still most likely, I would say 98 times out of 100, you have printed lineups or online lineups that you can go to. In 2001, 2002, when I was first starting, that wasn't a thing. I mean, websites for racetracks were, you could get some results and you could get some points, and that was about it. You weren't getting live updates. So the way you had to do rosters back then, and the way you had to, between races, get lineups from the scorers and write them down for yourself, is very, very different between now and then. Back then, if you didn't get driver information one way or another, you didn't get it. There wasn't an update on a website or on your phone to say, here's car number, name, hometown, and some information on this driver. None of that existed. So that's been, I think, probably the big change in how you do the job. For me, if you're talking more on a personal level, I guess, I think it's just, with time, you find what I started to talk about there. You find out who you are. You find out what works for you. You find out how you best organize your information. Because as you know, you're an announcer, and you and I have worked together many times. Your style may not be the same as my style when it comes to organization. I'm an Excel spreadsheet nerd. I like a lot of that stuff, but that doesn't work for everybody. And
Right.
so I think that's probably one of the biggest things, for new announcers, for young announcers, and for me is, just finding the best ways to have information at your fingertips, because I don't have a photographic memory. I don't remember everything that I need to remember. I remember stupid stuff. I probably can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday or 2 days ago, but I can remember racing details from a long time ago. But you can't rely on that when you're announcing for me, I can't rely on that to be enough to convey to the fans out there that, this guy has this many championships and this many wins and all that. Those things I don't remember. So I have to keep all of that organized in some way.
And you talked about you can remember things that may have happened a few years ago or whatever. Going along with that, then what has been some of your favorite past races that you've called where the action is just right on the edge of your seat, exciting? You're getting excited as an announcer watching these drivers. Is there a night that really stands out to you, or just a race that you would call one of your favorites that you called?
Ooh, oh, that's a tough one. There's been so many good races out there. We had a night at Huset's. Greg Baker, Linton Jeffrey, and Mark Dobmeyer were all racing for the win. They crashed at the finish line, the three of them, and they were three wide. One of them was in the air and backwards. I don't even remember who was the winner. I think it might have been Dobmeyer. That one was wild because that was, one of the few times where I didn't know who the winner was. That was cool. Being on the infield as the pit reporter when Mark Dobmeyer won with the World of Outlaws at Huset's was really cool. Seeing that team, the local team, win against the greatest drivers in the world was really cool. The vision I have of that night was Dave Lunstra, the team owner. As soon as that car come off of the scales, he jumped up on the nose wing and was kind of like he rode on the nose wing. His face was facing Mark, who was still in the car, and they were screaming back and forth, celebrating all the way as a four-wheeler pushed him. Another really cool one was being in the pits for Terry McCarl's return win with the World of Outlaws down here at Huset's. I don't remember the year, but Terry had suffered an absolutely horrendous break to his leg. Similar to the Tony Stewart break, one of those where it was, you may lose your leg, you may lose your life, you probably are never racing again. And he overcame that, and he was still hurting. He was not 100%, and he raced with the World of Outlaws at Huset's, and he won. And that was his one win with the World of Outlaws at Huset's. And watching his wife, Lori, on the infield, and then seeing Terry, an injured Terry, get out of his car and go all the way on top of that wing. He shouldn't have done it. Doctors would have been really mad at him. That was a really cool one for me to be part of. Boy, there's just so many that are so good. Probably my best personal moment for announcing a race was 2015, September of 2015. My son Hayden was 4 years old. It was the last race that we knew of at Huset's Speedway. The track had been sold. The Rubin family was done at Huset's. We knew Chuck Brennan was the new owner come 2016. We didn't know what that was going to entail, but we did know it was no longer going to be called Huset's Speedway. And so that last race, and those who know me know how close I am with the Rubin family. They are my family. So that last night, I had 4-year-old Hayden, my son, in the announce booth with us, and he announced some of the driver names. I would say the sponsors, the hometown, the car number, and then he would chime in with the name. And that was just for me personally one of the coolest nights. It meant so much, just as a dad with his son there announcing for the first time, but also, with the gravity of that night and of that event and what the future would hold. Such a huge night for me. That was really cool too.
And then, of course, after the 2016 Huset sitting dormant for a few years, and with the multiple tracks you've been to in the or I should say quad state area with the Midwest Sprint Touring Series, but when Huset's came back, which was to so many drivers home, what did it mean for you, especially to come back home to Huset's and once again be the voice of such a legendary track that you grew up at?
Oh, it's a blessing, and it's an honor to get to be part of that team at Huset Speedway. Nothing against all these other tracks. Don't take when I talk about Huset's, don't take me like I'm not saying great things about other racetracks, but we have to recognize Huset Speedway is a different level in our region compared to the other racetracks, right? Huset Speedway's been on video games. The 2002 World of Outlaws PS2 video game, it's been on there. It was on the other Ratbag dirt track racing games that were on PCs back in those days. You can talk to people from Canada. They know where Huset Speedway's at. You meet Australians who are into racing, and they know where Huset Speedway's at. When I'm on the road, and if let's say I'm at the Knoxville Nationals or something like that, and somebody asks, where are you from? It's easier to tell them I'm from 4 minutes away from Huset Speedway than to say I'm from Brandon, South Dakota, because that's what racing people all around this world know. So to get that opportunity to go back there is incredible. It's a blessing. It's different. Because I've had that family tie with the racetrack for so long. I'll be fully transparent with you. There are days it's difficult to go out there because I'm so used to the old days of, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my best friend, one of my best friend's dad and mom working in the office and going and seeing my sisters-in-laws in the concession stands. So it's different. It doesn't have that aspect now, but as a racetrack, as a facility, as the shows, it's on a completely different level than anything else we have in our area, minus perhaps Jackson, which, the new Jackson Speedway as it is now, is on a different level than it's ever been, but it's incredible. And I've had a ton of fun going to the racetracks. I've been blessed to be able to do so with the Midwest Sprint Touring Series and the Tri-State late models. And I'm really fortunate that I get to continue to do a lot of that into 2021. those nights going to the off-road speedways in Norfolk, Nebraska, or Denison, Iowa, with the late models, or wherever it may be, those are really fun as an announcer to get to go to different places. But boy, is it nice to be home and have Houston Speedway here. 4 minutes from my house, it's fantastic, and just a member of this community living in Brandon. It's been incredible to see the energy around that racetrack as a community in this last year as well.
Definitely great to see the track come back and the community able to have home once again on Sunday nights. You mentioned the Midwest Sprint Touring Series and the Tri-State Late Models, two of our local touring series, actually. You've had the call for so many of their races for both classes. How have those two classes progressed from when they started off just a few years ago to the level of competition that they're at now?
Oh, both of them have really accelerated with their level of competition. So the Midwest Sprint Touring Series came about really in this area. Dale Furby was instrumental in both, but there were some drivers involved with the MSTS as well. In 2015, both Houston Speedway and I-90 Speedway decided they needed to take a different step for sprint car racing. And to this day, I know a lot of the drivers with the 360s. I'm great friends with them, but I still understand the business decision that these tracks had to make. 360 sprints are not a support division. They're not. And so when you're running in the case of Houston Speedway, they were running 410 sprints every night plus 360 sprint cars. That's two headlining classes, and it just didn't make sense anymore for that racetrack with the emergence of 305s. With I-90 Speedway, same thing. It was a business decision. 360 sprint cars are a really high level class. And so they had to make changes out there in 2015. So that brought about the MSTS when 360s really right here in the Sioux Falls area made a pivot from a weekly class at local racetracks to a special division. And I believe that's a really good fit for that division. And so at the onset, it was really just kind of the local racers racing semi-locally when MSTS was formed. And now you look at it and the competition, it's not local drivers anymore. They're all still involved. They're all still really good, but it's been infused with some outside talent as well. You look at, a typical MSTS race, you're going to have your local group from right around here in the Sioux Falls area, and it's going to be infused with some Nebraska drivers that are really talented. This last year, we saw a lot of North Dakota drivers come down and race with MSTS. Once in a while, you get some of those Knoxville or, the other Iowa drivers that come in from the area. And that's really what has pushed our local guys to even get better. And so I think the competition level with MSTS right now is as good or better than it's ever been. And the same with the Tri-State Late Model Series. When that formed, it was just kind of some guys in this region who had late models and wanted to race them. And that was cool. And now with Mike Gross taking it over, rebranding it, making it a legit late model tour in our area, holy buckets. You look at the names that come and race with those guys, and it truly is a top level tour of late models in this area. Not only in this area, but for the vast majority of the country. And so that's really been cool to watch that transformation as well with the late models. South Dakota, our area in South Dakota is really weird, right? Like modifieds and late models are the most popular dirt racing forms in the country, but we really don't have a lot of that in the Sioux Falls market within, a certain mile radius of Sioux Falls until you got out to the Hurons and the Aberdeens and the Watertowns. But for some reason, there hasn't been a lot of late models around Sioux Falls because we went the sprint car route. But now having that, you've got some great Sioux Falls area late model teams all of a sudden that can travel this country and be competitive wherever they go, thanks to the competition that has come about because of the Tri-State Late Model Series.
And like you mentioned, drivers coming from different areas of the Tri and Quad State area. We've got drivers, like you said, from the North Dakota, South Dakota, even out west, like in Rapid City coming over, guys from Nebraska, just making, like you said, the series better and just really giving the local guys the motivation to, okay, hey, what do we have to do to make sure, that these guys are coming and racing with us, but, we got to remind them that, hey, they're on our turf and we need to make sure we put on a good show for them as well.
Well, here's kind of the analogy I use, and I use this a lot. I do a lot of radio control car racing. In the winter, I spend a lot of time on the road going to Rochester, Minnesota, Jared and I, and we get over there, and there is a world-class dirt oval outlaw sprint car racer over there that we race with week in and week out. And my analogy has always been the greyhounds will only run as fast as the rabbit. So you go to a dog race, and all the greyhounds, all the dogs are staged, and then the rabbit takes off and they all chase it. And really the race is with the dogs, but they only go as fast as the rabbit makes them go. And so I've used that analogy a lot of times with RC racing, that I am thankful that for years I can go race, get my butt whipped by one of the best in the world at what we do, because it makes me have to go harder and harder and harder to try to get to that level. And that's what you see with the racing around our area as well. As the competition gets better, it's one of those all boats rise things. So everybody gets better as that competition increases. And that's one of the things I think I'm so thankful for, to be in this area with our racing. We've seen it with Dobmeyer winning multiple races against the World of Outlaws. We've seen that. We've seen Terry McCarl win with the World of Outlaws. And you see these other local teams. You got Tim Kading, who has located to South Dakota to race with Lunster Motorsports. That just makes everyone race better. And that's a true blessing in our area.
And you mentioned, though, too, with all of the different classes and whatnot coming together and just making everything better, you've called all different types of racing, and now recently virtual racing for the SODAC iRacing series. What has that been like, calling those types of races, which people have been calling it racing simulator? How does it, differ from being in the announce booth at Hughes Speedway, calling the real thing, to now virtual racing?
The virtual racing is a lot faster. You've got like 30 seconds between heat races. Like the checker flag drops, the last car crosses the finish line, and the next heat race is just about to come to the green. So that actually caught me off guard when we first started doing the virtual racing on iRacing, just how fast it moves. It's really not that different. For how I do it, I set up basically a camera view that would be very similar to being in an announce booth, and away I go, quite similar to how I would announce an actual race. I'll be honest, there's a lot less prep to do an iRacing thing. You just don't have the sponsor and the driver information and the time to really get that in there. But other than that, it's very, very similar to announcing a real race. I guess maybe the biggest difference for announcing an iRace is you got to make sure that your beer fridge is well stocked before the race begins, and you got to be ready to have a few of those before, during, and after, maybe. But other than that, it's very similar.
And you mentioned competition level earlier. The level of competition that Troy Schures described in our last interview on the show here was the season one, we had a few repeat winners in the Sodak iRacing series, and very good like start to that, especially when the pandemic hit. And now they're currently in their second season, 7 different winners in the first 7 races, and not only the first repeat winner in race number 8 just last week. And they run here tonight, but it's going to be different. It's a non-points race tonight. How would you sum up the level of competition in the Sodak iRacing series?
Oh, I think exactly how all the drivers that we've been talking to would describe it is it's just like we've talked about real world around here. It is uh, really increased significantly over the last year. Everyone has raised their game, so to speak, to the point where it's incredible. I think if we go back and we'd watch the races from the first season, which were fantastic, by the way, we'd probably look at those and be like, oh, well, that's nothing compared to where we are now. And I think probably the biggest difference is, you had your handful of fast guys in the first season, and then you had the mid packers, and then you had, the guys that were always kind of filling in towards the bottom. I think the 5 guys that were real fast up top, maybe it was 4, maybe it was 6, whatever, but you had that handful up top. They're there, but that mid-pack group has all raised up and is right there with them. And then those guys that were filling in towards the bottom, they've raised up, and they're now those mid-packers. So it's one of those things where I'm looking forward. I hope they continue to do it, because I think we're just going to continue to see that get better and better.
Oh, most definitely. And just announcing with you every Wednesday night has honestly been a dream come true for me as well. If I would have been told 10 years ago, hey, you're going to be working with Shawn Neistadt, I never would have believed it. What's it like though, just on those Wednesday nights? Is it just like sitting in the announcer booth at Huset's, or is it just something completely different on a whole nother level?
It's similar, but it's different. You've still got the things that you need to do, and you have to have them organized. I think probably the biggest difference is like on this iRacing thing, when you and I are working together on that. I'm in my house in Brandon, you're in your house. So there's no, everything we say to each other is on a microphone. There's no like, and this in one aspect makes it more difficult. There's no like turning the microphones off and, hey, I'm going to do this, then you do that, then let's do this. We just kind of have to do it. And so I think we've been pretty blessed that it seems to work pretty well. I don't know, maybe you end the night every time and think, "Wow, that Shawn is a jerk," or whatever. But I'm having a good time with it. But I hope that's not the case. You're like, "Oh, gee, Shawn talks all the time," or "Shawn read this and I was going to read it." But I think that's probably the biggest difference between being in a real announce booth versus this virtual stuff.
And also with like bringing a guy like Jerry Van Sickle onto the announce team as well. I mean, just from my experience, I love working with Jerry. I have yet to do a actual race out in the real world with him. You've gotten to announcing with him in the announce booth at Houston's before. What is it like to work with a guy like Jerry?
Oh, it's one of a kind. But to be honest, it's not a bad thing for me to work with somebody like Jerry. Jerry is a punch of comedy, but also like very knowledgeable in the sport, and that's what makes him so unique to what he does. And now, he'll hear this and he'll be like, humble too. But with his style and his craft and how he does it, I need that sometimes. I am so glad he was there that opening night of Huset's, because his energy level was infectious, and it made me, it actually probably calmed my nerves a lot, because going into that night, the grand reopening of Houston Speedway, I was pretty, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but I think he probably put me in a better place to do a better job at what we did that night. And He's the one to thank for one of the coolest moments I've ever seen at a racetrack. He was the one when the street stocks were about to start hot laps that said, everyone get up, enjoy this. Houston Speedway is back. And every single person in that grandstand stood up, cheered, took pictures, hooted, hollered for the entire duration of a hot lap session. And that's one of the coolest moments I've ever seen at a racetrack. And that was thanks to him. Great friend, great person. I really, really look forward to working with him some more. He's probably one of my favorite announcers to listen to. If you ever get the chance to go to the Super Nationals at Boone and you want to be entertained and laugh and also be informed, the combination of Jay Van and Ryan Clark at the Boone Speedway for the Super Nationals, I'll put it out there as one of the greatest announcing tandems you'll ever hear.
I sadly have not made it to Boone yet, but I have IMCA TV on my TV actually. So
yeah, there you go.
You get to see, I guess, hear the announcing duo there coming from Boone. And like I said, it's great working with you and Jerry each and every week on the Sodak iRacing series. What is to come for the 2021 season for you?
A lot. And this is kind of getting weird, back in the day when I was doing Rock Rapids and Lake County and Huset's, and then I'd do a little bit of traveling in there when I had time. I was up there in the 60 to 70 races a year type deal when we had the Thursday night stuff at Huset's. I think I got to almost 80 races one year. And then, the bottom fell out here a few years ago. I think I was talking with Rob Goodman, who is an announcing friend of mine from Indiana, does Kokomo and does a bunch of USAC stuff out there and Gas City. And he asked me the one day, well, how many races you do this year? And I said, 12. And, he was doing his normal 60 like he usually does. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah, kind of things fell apart in our area. Done a lot of fishing though. So now we've got Huset's and we've got I-90 back open and we've got MSTS and Tri-State late models and Jackson's running a big schedule again next year. So I haven't yet laid out my 2021 schedule to know exactly where I'm going to be on what nights. I just know I'm going to be blessed and fortunate to be a busy man behind the microphone again this summer.
But definitely Sunday nights over at Huset's for sure on the schedule.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Looking at their schedule, that is going to be a lot of fun. With the World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink sprint cars coming in. They've got some NOSA sprint car 410 sprint car shows, some big 360 specials, some specials with the repairablevehicles.com tri-state late models that look to be a lot of fun. So, and then they've got a couple TBA slots that are on there that if some folks really did some digging, I think they could probably figure out exactly what those dates are. And I'm really, really excited for those as well. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great year to live here in the Brandon community. It's going to be a great year for our businesses that suffered with that racetrack closed for so long. But it's just going to be a good year. The better the biggest racetrack in your area does, the better the surrounding racetracks do as well, because it just brings more attention to the sport. So it's good, in my opinion, it's good that Houston Speedway is back up and running and getting a lot of attention in our area, because that it just helps our entire sport.
And of course it does, like you mentioned, with all the surrounding tracks being benefited by that as well, and always a good thing when the racing family comes together.
Absolutely. So really looking forward to my 2021. It has to be better than what we had to endure for a lot of 2020. We were blessed to get a lot of racing in this area in 2020, but let's hope 2021 looks a lot better on some exactly racing related points that did affect our racing community.
And definitely, I think we're all looking forward to 2021. Shawn, good as always to talk to you, my friend, and always looking forward to working with you. We will actually hear from you tonight as you and I and Jerry Van Sickle get a call trophy trucks from the road course called Wild Horse for the Sodak iRacing Series presented by Asphalt Pros tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. Looking forward to that, and thanks for coming on the show, man. Greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, my pleasure. This truck race thing tonight, left turns, right turns, jumps. I practiced on it. It's going to be wild.
Hence the term Wild Horse Speedways. So thanks again, Shawn, and good luck in 2021.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon.
Once again, that was Shawn Neistadt, and man, that guy is just an incredible, incredible announcer. Just amazing guy all the way around, and he's done so much for the racing community with helping being the voice of sprint car racing and late model racing in the area, and also becoming the voice of the legendary Huset Speedway. We're going to take a break once again and hear from Advantage Racing TV, and we will be back with upcoming events brought to you by Advantage Racing TV, and we will close out the show. Stay tuned. Advantage Racing TV is your source for local entertainment in the tri-state area. From compacts to late models and sprint cars, Advantage Racing TV has just what you need to cure your racing ailments. Check them out online at www.advantageracing.tv and take advantage of your racing addiction. We are back with the last part of the show where we talk about upcoming events on Advantage Racing TV and the Announcers Booth podcast tonight, 8 p.m. Central Time. It is going to be the Sodak iRacing Series presented by Asphalt Pros Trophy Trucks over at the Wild Horse Speedway. You are not going to want to miss out on that. It is going to be an enduro-type setting, and these guys put on great racing entertainment each and every week. So check that out tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time on Advantage Racing TV's Facebook page. Next week on the show, we are going to have Sport Mod driver Greg Hammond, driver of the 29J Sport Mod, on to talk about his racing career as well as the 31K of Nate DeSivey, 31K hobby stock driver out of O'Neill, Nebraska, to talk about his racing as well in the Nebraska area. Also, the 4-Orange Salvage question of the day. Once again, what was your favorite memory from the 2020 season? So be sure to go to facebook.com/S2HVoiceWorks and comment on the post there on what was your favorite memory of the 2020 season. I want to thank, once again, Troy Schures and Shawn Neistadt for being on the show today. Great talking to you guys, and good luck to all of your future endeavors. Also, a big thank you to Matthew Broadus, Jerry Van Sickle, and once again, Shawn Neistadt for helping out with the show, as well as I want to thank our advertising sponsors, Rapid Graphics, 4-Orange Salvage, Sodak iRacing Series, and Advantage Racing TV. This has been episode 1 of the Announcers Booth podcast, and we hope to see you back here next week inside the announce booth for another episode. Until then, enjoy your day, everybody.